Good morning. My name is Ryan Alappatt.
I'm Henrique Oliveira.
My name is Tyrone, Kirunda.
And I'm Jalen, Paige.
And we are Silicon Valley Consulting. Today, we are here to help you restructure your public branding image and push you into a new frontier. With that, I'll pass it over to Tyrone to discuss the company's current status quo.
Thank you. So we've defined the key issues at DER to be the following. Number one, an extensive history of mistreating minority workers, which actually includes rumors surrounding the management verbally abusing a non-white employee. Number two, a viral YouTube video which has created a poor public image and exposed the lack of diversity within the firm. And the last one, the infamous large carbon dioxide emissions. These are proven to be extremely difficult for the conscious investors who are wary of the reputation, and this translates to a declining investment. So, another complication we're having is a lack of diversity across the firm, which has created a poor company culture. And the last effect we're seeing is that investors are looking increasingly more at diverse companies with high ESG ratings, and which DER doesn't have. And so we have a solution for this, a three-pronged approach. Number one, diversity recruiting effort. Number two, transforming the firm culture. And number three, restoring the public image. It's super important for DER to have a new marketing campaign to attract investors.
All right, thank you, Tyrone. I will now be diving further into the three-pronged solution. Our number one is our diversity recruiting effort. We have two goals for this one. We want to bolster a diverse workforce and ameliorate public relations. Our action plan, improve job listing, standardize interviews, and offering incentives. Number two, we want to transform our internal culture. Our goals for this one, promote a culture that fosters diversity where minorities can feel comfortable. And two, to encourage trust in management. Our action plan, diversity training, creating an obligation to dissent, and a commitment to ethics. Number three is our public relations campaign. Our goals for this one, improve relationship with the South African government. And two, attract foreign investors. Our action plan for this one, a formal public appearance, and the new marketing strategy, which we will touch upon later. Moving into our diversity recruitment effort, we have three main things. One is sourcing. The first and foremost important thing in sourcing is to use neutral language in job listings. For example, the use of the word energetic has been shown to discourage older workers from applying to jobs, seeing as it may encourage youthfulness in their mind. Number two is the removal of nice to haves. Nice to haves are criteria for a job that aren't absolutely required but are listed as nice to have. Studies show that men apply to jobs when they only meet 60% of criteria, including nice to haves, but women tend to only apply to jobs where they meet 100% of the criteria. The removal of these nice to haves would mean more women and more minorities applying to our job. We want to reach out to relevant colleges in the area, especially within South Africa, and ensure that we can train diverse employees for our future. The next part is candidate screening. We want to implement blind interviews and resumes to limit personal bias. We want to standardize interviews with objective criteria and scorecards. Communications company Slack did this and saw a 5% increase in women in technical roles. We also want to ensure interviewers are diverse to limit bias within the interviewing body itself. The last part is shortlisting and hiring. We want to repurpose our ATS software. A lot of hiring software and artificial intelligence can discriminate against minorities. For example, things like foreign names may be discriminated against by hiring software. We want to rework this to remove any bias. The next part, seeding talent pipelines. We want to offer programs at local schools to young South Africans to encourage them to join our firm. We also want to work with local Black people in South Africa to give them the skills necessary to work at our job. We also want to incentivize referrals to underrepresented groups with a bonus. Technology giant Intel did this, and they saw a 43% increase in women working at Intel, and a 31% increase in underrepresented groups overall.
Thank you. So when looking at improving the internal culture, we want to start with a rebuild. And so that is the reconstruction of the C-suite leadership. And so another thing we want to do is regular firm-wide company culture audit to establish an understanding of the cultural underpinnings which affect the day-to-day within the business. And lastly, we want to establish diversity commitments and government councils on a firm-wide basis. This will allow for employees to find a place to, talk about these efforts and really having a safe environment where they can think of what they want to do and how they want to tackle this. And so when looking at implementation, we want to implement programs which support the advancement and retention of diverse talent. Not only do we want to get them inside the door, but when they do get inside the door, we want to keep them there. And so we're going to have programs where they can seek mentorship from senior people within the firm, which is going to advance their progress within the firm. And so number two, we want to look at empowering employees by inviting constructive criticism and feedback to encourage change. We do not want the juniorest person in the building to feel like they can't say something, which is going to be a big change and have a huge effect on the firm. And lastly, committing resources to learning programs and diversity training. We do not want to assume that people within the firm have the understanding and the know-how of how to do or how to be diverse and how to promote an inclusive environment simply because we're in 2022. And so what does this look like for the firm? We have a huge commitment. Number one being 50% of all entry-level analysts and associate hires in South Africa to be black and 10% in all other regions. Number two, 15% of all VPs in South Africa to be black and 7% in all other regions. And lastly, 40% of all VPs in the firm to be women. It said that we only have a demographic of 33% women in the firm, and so this is definitely something we're looking to change.
Yeah, so lastly, to touch on the third prong, we want to host a public relations campaign which will ultimately improve our relationship with the South African government and also to attract investors. So there's this well-known feud between the South African government, particularly the Department of Mineral Resources, like its leader, Gwede Mantashe, openly criticizing mining companies' disrespect towards government, and also threats to revoke mining licenses for companies that disregard their regulations. However, although this is true, South Africa currently remains the only country in Africa that actually has a direct interest in mining, allocating state funds into mining research. On a second note, McKinsey did a study around the world and found that investing in Africa has the highest likelihood of finding, quote, critical discoveries, largely due to the sheer density of mineral resources. However, at the same time, it is the continent experiencing the greatest decline of investing according to their Mine Productivity Index. Why is this the case? Well, see, investors fear political instability and corruption throughout Africa. However, in South Africa, it's the only government really that has a direct interest in mining. So what we propose is an improvement in the relationship between DER and the South African government so we can see more collaboration and ultimately more investing. Right now, what we're considering is a formal televised meeting with Mr. Mantashe and also members of the Black Economic Empowerment Council, in which DR will openly address its past during apartheid, perhaps even to an audience of affected families. Most importantly, we will emphasize the company's newfound commitment to helping South Africa's mining ratings and promoting high-paying corporate jobs to Black South Africans, ultimately lessening the country's wealth gap. Second part of our public relations campaign will focus abroad, particularly to attracting investors. For DER to become more ethical in mining, it needs to attract the eyes of investors. According to Morningstar, interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion rose 10% in the past decade, while another study from Morningstar found that 21% of investors displayed, quote, high interest, while another 23% displayed medium to high interest in investing in companies with a DEI focus. Only 11% were interested in result-driven companies, which means that most investors are looking for pro-ESG companies to invest rather than financial returns, which is really significant. And also, as the world goes electric, the demand for minerals will only increase. The base case for IEA's projections suggests that the demand for minerals will increase 30% by 2040. There's a clear market for attracting investors into mining, and the best way to do this is via a new marketing campaign which highlights DER's newfound efforts into becoming more ESG focused. We've currently spoken with efforts about promoting diversity in ESG's corporate staff, but not so much into research currently underway in making mining both more ethical and sustainable. From electric-powered bulldozers to autonomous equipment, making mining safer and more ethical. That research is, of course, expensive and needs capital to succeed. A new marketing campaign can really highlight DER's fresh commitment to progress and becoming a leader in an ESG leader in a largely non-ESG industry. Using data analysis, we can show investors that investing in DER is investing in a more sustainable future. A new logo designed by our marketing team does just that. It has the sort of a new DER logo against a backdrop of South African wilderness, sort of showing both our commitment to helping South Africa, the company which we have our roots in, and also into helping nature in the long run. A new ESG focus will also aid in attracting the new talent that we're looking for.
Thank you, Henrique. But as Silicon Valley Consulting, we understand that any holistic solution requires a multi-layer stage as well as a strong analysis of potential concerns, which is why it is necessary we bring up possible implementation concerns with our strategy. We've asked ourselves two main questions. First, how will this switch to sustainability and largely investiture in sustainable minerals benefit the company? Many concerns have brought up the switch to green energy being focused on future initiatives that may alienate current and traditional investors. But we have two reasons why this won't be the case. One, by emphasizing a political and corporate paradigm on future-focused development, without sacrificing current investment on traditional minerals or traditional resources like heavy coal mining. We won't lose traditional investment. Also, we understand that this is a multi-stage plan, meaning we aren't going to eradicate all of our investment in prior traditional resources today. This will take time, and we will slowly wean away from traditional investment towards more sustainable solutions. Second, the transition to sustainable energy like nuclear power may require surplus capital investment, but in establishing a multi-year strategy that will unload coal reserves to generate capital with a focus on sustainable mining over a period of a decade, we will ensure that we will increase investment for resources like nuclear power in the future. Also, sustainable funds we found match and even outperform non-ESG or environment, sustainability, and governance funds. A study found by Morgan Stanley explains that 4.3% median total rises are in concern to U.S. sustainable funds, meaning that when companies like Deep Earth Resources increase their investment in sustainable funds or sustainable resources, they are seeing returns higher than they would with non-sustainable resources. The second question we asked ourselves, will this switch to a focus in promoting DEI be worth the capital needed to invest? The answer, wholesale, absolutely. But there are two concerns we have to look at. First, that the cost of DEI reforms requires a steep installation and preservation cost. But we've actually found that organizations with an inbuilt DEI infrastructure see higher returns that outpace the cost time and time again. In fact, organizations with DEI training have demonstrated a 21% increase in profitability. And considering that workplace harassment, something that's been so inbuilt DER, continuously costs businesses across the international community over $7.6 million a year. By establishing a culture of inclusivity and ultimately eliminating harassment within the corporate culture, we can see those costs dwindle. Second, the lack of DEI prioritization by upper management circles can't occur. Even with our diversity recruiting efforts, even with an internal transformation of corporate culture, if we see negative publicity, as well as the absence of employment commitment, resulting in long-term corporate decline continue, this won't be the case. Which is why, when we establish these results and move forward with our directives, we need to maintain a long-term preservation of a strong, emboldened, and sustainable corporate culture. That's why, finally, we'll look at our next steps through a multi-stage plan. We can't inbuild and put in all of our analysis and all of our reforms today. That's simply not sustainable, and it's not an accurate measure of how we can best help the company. That's why we've established several directives over a period of year-long commitments, which Tyrone brought up earlier. By 2023, we will begin talks with local governments on how Deep Earth Resources can improve living conditions, both for its employees and neighboring communities. Second, we want to start a dialogue with the BEE, or the Black Economic Employment Council, and Black Economic Empowerment Council, as well as the Mineral Resources Council, on establishing a public apology, as restructuring our public branding is a critical facet of our solution and comes first. And second, and third, and finally, we want to standardize the interview process and reevaluate job listings, as creating a diverse job and employment talent is essential to future growth. By 2026, we have three main directives. First, ensuring that 50% of all analysts and entry-level associates hired in South Africa must be Black employment. But we're also taking a global stance on this. In our offices in Asia, Europe, and Australia, that number must be at least 10% across all regions. In addition, 15% of the workforce that hold VP titles in South Africa specifically must be Black employees, and at least 7% in all regions. When we consider that Black employees make up 30% of the entirety of racial demographics in the company, that's a problem. We need to increase that number now. And considering that 40% of all VPs must be female, because currently the gender demographics of the company have females at over 33% of the workforce, that's also another issue that we need to rectify now and long term as well. Finally, the last part of our process is in 2030, in which we're slowly decommissioning older as well as unsustainable mines, increasing the utilization of contemporary green technology for at least 50% of our mines, and continuing and even investing more of our funds into research and development into carbon-free mining equipment, because that's simply where the future is headed. I'll now pass it to Henrique to close this off.
Yeah, so as you can see here, it'll really take some time to really reshape DER's public image. And so we here at Silicon Valley Consulting are really looking forward to working with you and really collaborating through this timeline in building up your public image and making DER sort of the only real ESG-focused company in the mining industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.